What does the job market look like in the upcoming new year? What are the trends? What are the shifts that we're seeing industry wide? A lot of different questions heading into 2024 from all kinds of different sectors. What about inflation? How is this going to impact the job market? Well, let's bring in an economist that knows exactly what we're talking about and perhaps can shed some light on those trends. I'm joined now by Corey Stahl, economist for Indeed Hiring Lab. He has done a lot of work and focused on the U.S. labor market. Corey, good morning to you. So let's talk about the 2024 Jobs and Hiring Trend Report. Tell us what you're seeing. Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, thanks for having me. So, overall, what we're seeing, I think, as you talked about, we're kind of nearing the end of 2023. And I think as we near the end of 2023, one of the most interesting things as we kind of reflect back on the year is that we really entered 2023, with a lot of people talking about how there might be a recession in 2023. There was a lot of kind of fear around, potentially what might happen with the Federal Reserve raising interest rates and inflation being where it was. But I think what's really notable here is that we didn't see that. So far, we have about a month left, but so far in a lot of the economic data we're looking at, that's something that we have not seen unfold. And so as we look forward to 2024, I think the big question that's on our minds as we kind of look forward to what we might expect is how can we repeat that same performance? How can we go into 2024 with strength? And I think really a lot of it's going to come down to doing the same things we did in 2023. What we saw was that employer demand was still pretty high. We saw a lot of employers still hiring at rates higher than it was before 2019. We also saw a lot of people entering the job market. We saw people kind of jumping around, quitting their jobs at elevated rates. We did see wage growth start to come down a little bit, but that's something that ultimately has helped somewhat in that fight against inflation that you mentioned. And I think probably most notable, something that's going to be really interesting to look at in 2024 is going to be generative AI. As we entered into 2023, nobody had heard about, generative AI and ChatGPT. And then all of a sudden these tools came onto the scene and we started seeing a lot of articles about people losing their job or their jobs being transformed. So I think as we go into 2024, really keeping an eye on these types of trends, on keeping an eye on the way in which generative AI is going to have an impact is going to be very interesting.
Very interesting indeed, Corey. Thank you. So let's talk about the upcoming year. You're right, though. I can remember last year at this time, no one was really talking about AI. No one was talking about ChatGPT. But now you can't even go a few minutes without somebody talking about it. So let's talk about maybe the skills that'll be helpful for those job seekers in 2024, and beyond.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think ultimately, as we look at the skills, we talk a lot about, as you mentioned, we've heard so much about these types of generative AI skills. And I think what's going to be important for job seekers to know is that, despite everything we've heard about these jobs, it's still a pretty small percentage of the overall job postings on Indeed. If we look back just a couple weeks ago to the Indeed platform and job postings, what we've seen is that it's less than like 0.5% of jobs on Indeed that are actually asking for ChatGPT and things. So I think that for job seekers, I think really being able to embrace the technological changes of ChatGPT and generative AI is going to be a good thing. I think you should really jump on that. But I think you should also be aware that, it's still such a small fraction of overall job postings that really the jobs and the skills that are going to be important in this next year, in many ways, are going to be the skills that have been important before. We've seen that, software development in some areas have had kind of a pullback in the number of employers hiring, but we've also seen areas like nursing and manufacturing have continued to be really, really strong in terms of hiring. And so those skills in those types of areas, in-person skills, are going to continue to be really important going forward into the coming years. So again, I think you can embrace generative AI, but also don't forget that human skills are really such an important part of many jobs. So even though ChatGPT and generative AI have a potential to impact these jobs, there are many things that each of us do in our jobs that cannot be replaced by those types of tools.
Good advice there, Corey. So let's talk about some tangible things that we can give employers and job seekers out there. If they're watching this and they're thinking about 6 weeks or so left until 2024, how would you get their mind right if you had to say maybe 2 or 3 things, bullet points, what they can expect, employers and job seekers, in 2024?
Yeah, so I think for employers, I think it's going to be key to really keep an eye on the labor market, and really understand the environment we're going into. We are coming off of this 2023 where the labor market was really resilient, but the labor market is still cooler than it was at the beginning of the year. But I think for many employers, I think they'll still be surprised that, again, the labor market is still a lot warmer than maybe they might expect. So continuing to try to compete for workers is going to be key in 2024, especially in some of the industries we mentioned, like in nursing and manufacturing. And so I think they can do that by really separating themselves with benefits and with advertising pay openly. I think there are ways to do that. For job seekers, I think it's also good to be cautiously optimistic going into 2024. Again, we're going into a labor market that's a little bit cooler, but there still are plenty of opportunities out there. And I think for both job seekers and employers, I think keeping an eye on the labor market at all times, on all of the different data that's coming out is going to be key. And people can do that by going to hiringlab.org. And that's where we publish, this trends report, but also a lot of other economic research and this data that we produce at Indeed.
Anything else you want to mention before we let you go, Corey?
No, again, I think overall, what we're seeing in 2024 is just hopefully a path forward where we can carry forward with what we've seen in 2023. Because again, we're entering in a little bit different situation than we were in 2023, but still with some promise of continuing to work towards a case where inflation comes down and the unemployment rate doesn't go up. So right now we're still sitting pretty well, but we're going to want to keep an eye on that data that I mentioned.
No question about it. Corey Stahl, an economist at Indeed Hiring Lab. We appreciate your time. Thank you so much for giving us the trends and the insights and what employers and job seekers can expect in 2024. Corey, thanks.
Thank you.